This is Groundeffected. My name is your dad. Today's video is sponsored by Nympha 3D, but we are also being supported by Nova 3D with their new 3D printer in order to print this epic model. This is the new Nova Whale 4 Ultra 16K resin 3D printer. It has a heater and it prints down to 14 by 19 microns on the XY.
Is one of the most solid.
The Whale 4 has a flip-up lid design. It also has an advanced 6th gen cob LED light engine. This is some crazy stuff to do with the LEDs that you use to cure your prints on the printer, obviously. The build volume on this machine is 211.68 by 118.37 by 220 millimeters. They say it's a 10-inch 16K with absolutely exquisite details. If you want more information about this machine, then follow the link in my description. So the thing about making videos is that I can bring you into this process at any time that I want. This may look like I've just taken these parts off and they're ready to be painted. But if I told you that straight up, that would be a lie. These parts have already been prepared. And that is because this video would be so long if I spent all the time just preparing my model rather than painting it. And this is mostly a painting video, so we're gonna mostly paint this model. And so, without making this take too long, let's just get into painting Jinx and how I'm going to approach making this model. So I primed everything using Chaos Black from Citadel. This is one of the best primers that I personally found I like the most. And then I got around to cleaning my airbrush because I haven't used it in a couple of weeks, and it is definitely full of paint. And you should probably do this pretty much now and then, otherwise you might have a sad time. But also when you do this, remember to put some oil on the moving parts, because this just helps lubricate things and make things work a lot better as time goes on. Now I'm going to do a zenithal, and when I do a zenithal using an ink, I like to use alcohol to thin my ink down. That is because I find that it breaks the ink so much up that it goes on super smooth. Now you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I really don't like how white tends to go a little bit bitty when you paint it neatly or just use water to thin it down. The next step is obviously going to be pinkle. That is because I'm going to start out by painting the skin tones on this model. A pinkle is essentially just the color between purple and pink. It's neither purple nor pink, but that's the color that I start my skin tones with. I also have still yet to buy any more red ink, so a substitute for red ink at this point is going to be this Ball Red contrast paint. Whilst that is drying, I can quickly layer a little layer of blue onto the hair pieces that I know I'm not going to need to do much with until much later on. Now I can start working on the skin tones again, and as you can see, I've placed my first skin tone into my airbrush. I'm then going to take some water and I'm just going to slap that into my airbrush. I'm just going to mix it around with the dirtiest, ugliest brush you'll ever see in your life and just make it super thin. The trick with skin tones is to just thin it out. I say this over and over again, but you need to be working with thin paints. If your paint is too thick and it's covering the layers underneath it too much, well then you might as well have not even done the layers underneath it. So thin your damn paints out and you might find that this is a little bit easier to swallow. Now that the base of my skins is pretty much set up, I can come back in using some of this rosy flesh. And you may notice that I've put the model together at this point. This is because I find that it's easier to get the transitions between parts when they're together. If you do this separately, they may not have the correct transition from highlight to shadow. Moving on from the skin tones while they dry, I can quickly slap down some paint on the boots. Now I'm an absolute idiot and I completely misjudged the color of the boots. They're actually meant to be black. So I'll leave this in so you can watch me making a stupid mistake before I realized that they should have been black, and came back and painted black on it anyway. I don't actually know why I thought that they would be brown, but I thought this, and we'll just move on. Her gat needs to have some colors all over it, and those colors are going to be bright and bold in the areas that are bright and bold. I'm also going to want to try and add some form of a metallic sheen. So I used that turbo dork over the top of the purples that I laid down just to make it look a little bit metallic, I guess. And now I'm going to move on to adding the orcish dermis into the bendy parts of the skin, mostly from the shadows. Also at this point I realized that the tips of the gap was just not bright enough, so I layered them with a layer of white ink before coming back with a fluorescent over the top of that, just to make them really bright and powerful. Now going back to the skin tones, I'm going to work on the lighter versions of the skin now. This is where the highlights and the light is hitting the skin a lot more. So at this point I want to tone down my airbrush pressure and I want to have my paints as thin as I possibly can. It's going to take multiple layers to build this up, and sometimes it looks like it's going on really fast in the video, but honestly, in truthful, it sometimes takes quite a while to build these layers up. I will take a little bit of white at the end here and mix that with whatever's left over of the lighter skin tone, and this is going to be placed very carefully in the brightest parts. These are like the specular highlights on an armor, except for it's on skin. Now moving on to the boots, where I realized that I had painted them instead of black, I made them brown. I added a little bit of blue over the top, and this is going to help make them look black and not brown. Also, I was sent these brushes from Avant-Garde, and now that it is time for me to start using a brush to paint the model, I'm going to put these brushes to the test. Now, I'm not going to give you my full opinion on these brushes in this video, and that is because this is the first time I've used them. So, I'm going to need a whole lot more time working with them before I even give you an opinion on what I think about these brushes. So let's just move swiftly along. Just note that I have mentioned them, and we're going to move on. On the base, you can see that I'm using some fluorescent pinks to spray over everything. This video was sponsored by Nympha 3D, and I'm going to be totally honest, if you haven't run already, you need to go right now into the description and go check out her Patreon. Starting from just $10 a month, you can have models just like these, and if you are even remotely interested, then you should 100% go check them out right now. The models available this month are Maria, Jinx, Scarlet, Princess Peach, Yuna, Rosalina, and I'm going to be totally honest, you'll be missing out if you haven't got yours. I am very particular about the models that I like. Nympha is one of those sculptors that I just like the way she works. Amazing, incredible artworks. The keys were impressive, and I think you should just check it out. For no other reason than I think you should just go check it out. Thank you, Nympha, for sponsoring this video, and I hope to work with you so much more in the future. The highlight was not good enough, so I ended up spraying white over it and then putting more fluorescent over the top of that. I painted her little plaster on her leg using some deck tan. That's right, deck tan game is now started, and you can start drinking immediately. After I was done with the deck tan, however, I took some of the skeleton horde and I painted that very thinly over the top of the deck tan, because it couldn't just be a white plaster, it had to have some kind of color in it. Now on the boots, I'm going to paint deck tan again over all of the laces everywhere. Once I've got all the laces completely lined up and looking like laces and nice and tidy, I'm then going to come back using the fluorescent pink and I'm going to paint that over the laces again. This is done because it's so hard to paint this color over the top of a dark color, so you lay down a light color, therefore giving you something to put your even brighter color over the top of, making it even brighter than what it was before. Using some dark silver and also some silver, I'm going to then paint some of the embellishments on her boots. And once I'm satisfied that all of the embellishments are painted as satisfactorily as possible, I'm going to take some liquid skill in the form of this panel line wash, and I'm going to slap this pretty much over everything. Now, I wasn't as neat and tidy as I could have been when I did the laces. However, this liquid skill is going to hide some of that for me. Don't rely on it to hide things though, but it is a way of helping to hide some dirty mistakes, let's call it that. Now I'm going to work on the stripes on her pajama pants, and these are quite difficult, and also getting the color right was also difficult because for some reason I really struggle with purples and pinks. I can never find enough and I can never find the right ones, but in order to do this, what I did was painted a dark purple down at first and then sprayed that squid pink back over the top of everything to dull the purple and also to make the next purple that is a very bright color much easier to paint over that dark purple. And as you can see, the results are, by very carefully painting in between those lines, I can leave out a line. It gives me the light pink with a dark line and a darker pink or purple on the inside of that line. I'm not going to lie, this took me a good few hours. So if you're doing something like this, just take your time. When I was done with the stripes and happy with their orientation and the shape of them, I then sprayed Magos Purple into the shadows over everything, making sure to give it some shape. I then took some of that darker purple and painted that over the side hip. I don't know why that is darker purple, but it is. But at this time, I can also unmask the skin areas that are masked up to prepare for the painting of the pajama pants. Now I can also take my time to paint the straps in Sagor brown that are hanging around her waist. During this time, I also painted some of the little metallic pieces, like the buckles and things like that. I also took a little bit of a brighter, or should I say a little bit of a lighter brown, and I dry brushed that over the belt straps and everything. I took a tan color and painted the outside rim of the side strap as well as the other side strap, the entire strap. Then taking some more gold, I'm going to paint around the buckle of the belt. This is on the front end of the belt, and also the weird little shaped X thing that is on the belt buckle itself. I'm also going to paint the little spikes on her side of her belt, but these, I'm going to be honest, I needed to come back and repaint that little piece in the middle with a different brown, but I didn't even film that part. We're not even going to worry about it. I'm going to take some washes and I'm very carefully going to spray them into the shadows of the tan parts that I previously painted. Now I've got to add some stripes, and I use some Agrax Earthshade to just paint those stripes in very carefully over the top of those tan pieces. Moving on to the glove on her hand, I'm going to then paint that with this leather brown. As you can tell, I use the same techniques to paint the pajama sock that is obviously on her arm. And using the washes very carefully, I'm able to create some shadows on the parts that I'd painted without overspraying at least too much on the rest of the model. I painted gold onto the little things on her knuckles, and pretty much that's the hand done. Now I can move on to painting her vest, and her vest is the same color as I used for the glove, except this color is not very good at coverage, especially over large areas, so I had to do multiple layers of this, and what you are seeing is just the first layer. When those layers were dry, I then came back using this much lighter brown to paint the strap that goes across the underside of a vest, and this is to help separate this strap from the other straps. Using multiple browns is a very good way to kind of distract your eyes and not feel like everything is the same material, because all the materials are different. Now for her tattoos, I used some Posca pens, and at first I thought I could get away with using a light purple as an outline around the little clouds that need to be painted on her body. I'm going to be totally honest here, and I'm going to ruin it for you, but that didn't work. But I'm going to show you anyway, because it wouldn't be cool if I just hid that, and I'm going to do my best to try and show more mistakes in the future as well. Now, I knew I was going to change from using that pen, but that didn't stop me placing down all the rest of the blue at first before I did any changes. So I painted all of the clouds, and by painting, what I mean is I actually just drew them on with the Posca pen in the place that I needed them to be. I went down to the hobby store and I bought myself some painting pens. This was just from the cheap hobby store down the road, and these are really terrible pens, I'm not going to lie, but they did the job. They have a sharp tip that is brush-like in a way, and the color is purple. It is not as saturated as I would like it to be. They are not consistent at all, and it's definitely not permanent, so might not be the best one to rush out to go and buy. If you are making this yourself and you want to get the same technique, then maybe try look for something that's a little bit more permanent. But because they're not permanent, what I decided to do was lock them in using a little bit of this Liquitex matte varnish. You remember how I said not to use the same brown for everything? Well, this is another good example of it, and I'm painting her necklace straps. I don't know if they're necklaces or straps, but whatever they are, I'm using a darker brown. So there are 3 different browns just on the torso of this lady, and this really helps to separate the materials. Even if you're not good at painting different textures and stuff like that, you can at least just use a different color to help differentiate from the materials. I painted her buckles on the center of that strap on her chest with the gold, which is actually bronze in my case, and I used deck tan to paint the straps holding it together, and then came back with Agrax Earthshade and very carefully shaped and shaded the shadows on the vest itself. I also used a thin brush and put some of that Agrax into the lines that go down on the creases of the vest. Now it's time to work on a weapon, and this is pretty simple really. I took some dark silver, painted the rim as well as the vents on the back part of the gat. I also took that same silver and dry brushed that over the top of the handle for the gat itself as well. Using that same dark silver, I then painted the barrels of the gats and also on the inside of the gat itself too. I'm going to use the same dark silver again, and I'm going to dry brush that over the top of the middle part of the gun. Now obviously I used a lot of the same color for this, and that is because this is made of the same materials. Do you see how that works? I hope that you can actually see the correlation, that is the correct word, for using the same color for the same materials and using different colors for showing different materials. I'm going to use a little bit of silver and dry brush that over the top. This just kind of helps to make it look like it's been used a little bit more. I'm going to take some red leather and paint that onto the handle of the gat itself, and also I'm going to use a slightly different coppery color for the tip of that handle as well. I sprayed all of these parts at the end using some washes, mostly Agrax and ROXY Flesh Shade. This just helps to make them look a little bit more lived in, and doing it with the airbrush makes it look a lot cleaner, I would say. If you painted it on by hand, it just leaves horrible pooling everywhere. On the handle, I painted that using bronze for the handle and came back and repainted the black where she's holding on to, and then you can see me spraying Agrax over everything just to get the shadows back in. Now for her hair, I'm going to change up with the blue that I used originally, mostly because I ran out of the other one, and I'm going to move on to the scale 75 one that I have, and that's only because that's what's on my shelf and is roughly the right color. For some of her makeup, I'm going to treat this a little bit differently than normal, and I'm going to use Magos Purple around her eyes and a little bit of a bright pink around her cheeks. I want her eyes to feel very like tired, because that's just kind of the feeling I get from this character, let's say. I'm going to then add a little bit of a line of skin tones underneath the bottom of her eyes just to bring it out. As you can see, her eyes look quite tired already, and I'm going to then put black to start setting up the eyes, and while that dries, I'm going to use Magos Purple to paint her lips. When her lips are completely done, I'm then going to come back with some Sagor Brown, and I'm going to paint very carefully her eyebrows. Now, I've had mentioned before in a video that eyebrows are really hard, and you're not wrong, they are extremely hard. But speaking of something else that's hard, getting the shape of the eyes is extremely important. I use this highlight skin color because I really like the way that this looks. And either it's because of stalling for the most difficult part, or I just felt like this was unnecessary at this point, but I decided I was going to do a little bit of a shadow on the hair at this point before doing the actual eyes of this model. And for the eyes of the model, I'm going to use a dark purple and a very bright pink for the insides of those eyes. I'm going to use this very small brush, which is a 2/0, if that helps you in any way, and I'm going to paint very carefully the iris of the eye. This is going to be done in the dark color, and once I'm happy with the shape of this, I'm going to come back in with the brighter color to shape up the inside, leaving the darker color around the rim. I'm then going to take some black to paint that into the center of that little circle that I made and make myself a pupil. And once the pupils are done, I can take a actual white and paint that where I want the specular highlight to be, and then obviously now the last thing to do is just paint the golden cuffs around her hair, and when those cuffs are all painted, I can call it done. Okay, we've reached the end of another Groundeffected video, and I just want to take this time to thank everybody, absolutely everyone who has shown me any support. If you have showed up to watch the videos every single week, well, you, my friend, are obviously a very good person, I think, perhaps. I don't actually know anything about you, so I'm not even going to get down that road, but what I do want to say is a very special thank you to the Patreons, because those people have helped keep the lights blinding me, as in, they've helped pay my electricity bill, and I could not make this channel or any of this happen if it weren't for them. Speaking of Patreon, there will be an extended cut for just the face painting, just the eyes. I'm going to make a slightly extended version of that for my Patreons to try and help explain some of the stuff that happened in the eyes, because it would just make the videos too long if I left it on YouTube. I want to say thank you to the sponsor, of course, that is going to be Nympha 3D. Check her out if you haven't already. That should be your first port of call. And also the 3D printer that was sent to me by Nova 3D, that machine is in the description as well. If you want to know more about that, there will probably be a video over on Fohammer. Also, there is a $100 discount if you buy that machine. There is a link and also a code down below. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I have not signed up for any of the affiliate programs, not one single one of them with Nova. So if you buy it from that link, I do not get a single penny. That's because I didn't even sign up. I forgot to do it, and I can't even be bothered. Genuinely, I don't care. Buy the machine, don't buy the machine. I don't even care whether you do or don't. Whatever you're doing, though, make sure if you were on the toilet, you washed your hands. And this is the time where I tell you, if you didn't like anything in the video, I really don't care, and you should probably f*** off.